Hi, this is Amber.
And this is Lisa.
And you're listening to Unexplained, Arkansas, a new podcast that explores urban legends, mysteries, and the unsolved in the natural state.
We're just two best friends discussing the unexplained in Arkansas.
Hello, and welcome to Unexplained, Arkansas. This is Amber.
And this is Lisa.
And this is episode number 27. It is actually the second of our Unexplained shorts. And every time I say Unexplained
Just
shorts,
saying that.
I think about the shorts I used to wear in the early 90s. Those were some unexplained shorts, like some skirts and gaucho short looking things. I don't know. All kinds of varieties of unexplained shorts. The 90s was a bad time for shorts. Okay.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
You know, I had a lot of skirts with like shorts underneath them too. Oh, I had jean skirts and jean shorts too.
I have a thing with jean shorts. Not a fan. Not a fan.
I mean, now that you say that, I don't really remember you ever wearing jean shorts when we were younger.
No,
very rarely.
and I see, and I'm not even going to say what I'm thinking because I'll probably offend like a mass amount of people
who enjoy jean shorts.
Yeah, I think that there's a time and a place, and it's never. And then it's also like I don't like men in jean shorts. I don't like men in jean shorts. But wow. Yeah, so there we go. I'm not a fan of jean shorts. So. And cut-off shorts, don't even get me started.
Cut-off shorts. Yeah.
No.
Well, I will tell you this. That's not the kind of short
we're doing
tonight.
Well, so far we're not being very short.
That's true, because we were going to keep this to 30 minutes, and I actually have a timer going.
Okay,
we're on a mission.
We're on a time frame. On a mission. Come on.
Okay, so we are going to talk about something that I don't think could be expanded into an entire episode, but it was so interesting that I wanted to cover it, and I thought that covering it, within our unexplained short umbrella would work. So, again, welcome to episode 27, which we are going to call the mysterious Canaan Cemetery of Marshall, Arkansas. Dun, dun, dun. Yes. Dun, dun. So the first part about this, I mean, you'd have to have listened to our episodes before to know that we spent quite a bit of time in Marshall at the beginning of March. And Lisa, do you want to kind of explain why we were up there besides going to the Daisy Queen?
Well, you just mentioned my favorite part. No. Okay. So we actually drove to Marshall to go visit to visit Janie Ward's grave because I was researching and we just her case, and we just actually dropped that first episode so that's episode 26. But I did want to do some background, and so we drove to Marshall, and so she's buried in this Canaan Cemetery there, and so we found it, and then we found a lot more than we bargained for. So yeah. Yes. And I would say, awesome. Even though we're not like academic specialists on history and such, we are graveyard connoisseurs, right? we do know a graveyard or two. We love a good graveyard, but I will say that this was probably the coolest. Well, maybe cool's not the right word, but it was the most interesting graveyard I've ever been to in my life. It was really pretty out there too.
Oh yeah, it was a gorgeous spot, but the graves it was like something out of a movie. It gave me the sense that I was somewhere where pioneers had once been. That's how old it was. And in fact, I found the oldest graves, and we'll talk about all of that. So let's just kind of get started. Now, Marshall is located in northern Arkansas, and we, like I said, stumbled upon this cemetery in March while we were doing research for the Janie Ward case. Now, Canaan Cemetery is, like she said, where Janie Ward is buried. we had every intention of just finding Janie's grave, taking the pictures, and leaving. But then we looked around and we realized we were in one of the most interesting cemeteries we'd ever seen. And, like I said, it's hard to describe all the uniqueness of the cemetery. However, like I said, I'll try. Within the bounds of the cemetery, there are approximately, and I found this out for sure, there are approximately 1,345 memorials. The memorials range from average raised headstones and flat grave markers to what can only be described as above ground tombs. Many of the tombs are seemingly erected by pioneers in the area, and I have that on pretty good authority. I have several locals that sent me messages and emails, and a lot of these do go back to what you would call Arkansas's pioneer days, which is pre-Civil War and, immediately following the Civil War. Several of these graves are, and this is the raised tombs, are large in size, rectangular in shape, almost like a coffin. There are 4 walls of sandstones around most of these graves with a slab of sandstone sometimes on the top. And several of them have a diamond-shaped headstone attached to the monument. So very cool. Another interesting tidbit is that there is at least one mass grave that is said to hold a single family. Now, we were there in the middle of the day.
Or families.
I don't know, because, I wasn't able to find out exactly what happened to this family. And I did look, and I looked for a long time, but the caretaker of the cemetery was actually there, unless he was a ghost, and he really wasn't. And
remember he had that little dog that was portly.
He was a ghost dog.
And he called him, his name was Little Bit.
Did you just call him Portly?
He was portly. I felt that was a nice way to say it.
Maybe it was the ghost caretaker and his portly ghost dog.
Yes. It was like a little, what was it? Like a little dachshund mix. And it was, I don't know. He was like, yeah he's a fatty. I'm like,
He knew his way around the cemetery. So yeah, and we really didn't know why the caretaker was out there, but we're getting ahead of ourselves.
He was
Let
working.
me tell you. He was? Okay.
Yeah,
working
he was. I mean, he was.
What?
Well, no, he was raking leaves. He was actually raking.
Okay.
And he was raking leaves. So
so this cemetery, for those of you that are interested, it is not far off Highway 65. And if you are a big Branson fan like
miles.
me, it's like 3 miles off of that main road. So you take Highway 333 off of 65 South, and it'll lead into Viper Drive. And that's where the cemetery is Viper Drive. That's kind of a cool name for a road.
And I was driving that day, and I believe your words were, "Where are you taking me?"
Probably so.
Yes, that's what you said.
And I do think that they called the area Canaan, and that's where Canaan Cemetery came from. So according to history and this one publication I found called The Historical and Architectural Heritage of Searcy County by William D. Baker, Searcy County is in the south central part of the Ozark Mountains with the Buffalo River and the middle fork of the Little Red River being major streams running through the county. Now, because of this, it became highly populated, for that time period because it did have all those running streams of water. Baker said there is also evidence of Native Americans from the early Archaic times, which means 7,000 to 8,000 BC. And probably, this is including historic Indians and early Euro-American home sites, which would pretty much fit what we saw within the cemetery. There are over 300 archaeological sites also on record in Searcy County, which I did not know. That's a lot of archaeological sites. Yeah. And they're ranging from the small scatters of stone tools and debris to villages along the major streams and to major bluff shelters, which have several feet of accumulated cultural debris. So that's pretty cool. Now, the cemetery itself was established sometime, and this sounds crazy, but sometime between the 1830s and the 1850s. Now, there is no specific date because for a long time there was only one grave. There was
Yes.
only one grave, and it was a little African American boy that passed away between, and this is what his headstone reads, between the 1830s and the 1850s. And
And he's
people
said to be the first. Yeah.
he is said to be the 1st.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was not another grave until into the 1850s. So that was a pretty large gap of time where it wasn't really an active cemetery. It was just one grave site. Now, the cemetery was established at some point right before the Civil War. And just to refresh, the Civil War was, and I looked this up to make sure, April 12th, 1861 to May 26th, 1865. Now, this cemetery has a lot of headstones and markers, but what sets it apart are those large people-sized sandstone tombs that are scattered throughout the cemetery. And that's what surprised Lisa and I. And we were like, whoa, what did we just stumble into? Because I don't know another cemetery in Arkansas that looks like that. Or even I've never been to a cemetery that looks like this.
No, I had never seen anything like that. And so we did post pictures from that day, and basically like that, sorry, I pulled it up. That post got so much traffic, got 277 shares and around 900 likes and comments and such. But a lot of people, there were people that said that they were woodsmen's graves. And so I had never heard that term. All I knew was that from my perspective, it was like, built up tombs. And then I asked the guy, the little, I don't remember I don't think he gave me his name, but anyway, he gave me Little Bit's name, but not his name. But the caretaker, I said, are there bones in there? Because I saw, because these were so old that there were like gaps in the rocks. And so I saw, and I'm like, Amber, I am looking at both. Like, I am looking at people in there. But anyway, he did say that they were buried. Some were buried in the ground, some were not. So he did say that.
Well, a lot of the locals that sent in messages, and then a couple of the articles I read about said that most all of them are buried under the ground. And, there may just be a few that are not, but whatever it is, if you saw bones, then you saw bones. Yeah.
I know what he told me. So
yeah. So, and if he's
and I'm not questioning cemetery, Little Bit's dad. Okay.
Well, it sounds creepier to say that they are buried on top of the ground, I guess.
I think that's the point, because otherwise, if they're buried in the ground, I think you would just, like a normal situation, you just put up a rock to, like a place marker. But
right.
Why would you build up a tomb?
Well, I think part of it might be maybe to keep animals out, because this was a long time ago, and this was before, Arkansas was populated, and maybe they were trying to keep wild animals out. Who knows? All right. So according to Susan Young, who is a contributor of the Shiloh Museum of Ozark History, Canaan is placed with green rolling pastures, and that is very true, with Ward Mountain, also known as Russell Point, in sight. Now, according to Young, the pioneer tombstones are very rare for the Ozarks. They are described by her as two-tiered slabs of sandstone, with an upright headstone honed into a diamond and fitted into place. Young also states that a large number of graves in the Ozarks from this time period face east. And do you know why they face east?
I do not.
Okay, because Jesus is coming back in the east.
Oh, okay.
And so that's why. Okay. And I don't know if a lot of graves still adhere to that, but in that time period, most graves would face east. Now, there is a book that I found very, very interesting by a writer named Abby Burnett. And she is the author of Gone to the Grave, Burial Customs of the Ozarks, the Arkansas Ozarks, 1850 to 1950. And this is a great book. I've read it. I've used it a couple of times for different things I'm doing, but it has a lot of information about the burial customs, not just in the Ozarks, but in Arkansas, and how these tombs and things were erected. Now, still, what we saw in Canaan is very rare. Another word for what we saw is tomb tables or box tombs, just, you don't see them a lot in the state of Arkansas. The closest thing to what we saw, you could say, was probably the tombs that they have in Tennessee. And the comb graves are a type of covered grave called tent graves. And it's basically two rocks, usually I think sandstone or something like it, that are forming a tent or a little gabled roof. And these were very popular in the 19th and early 20th centuries, which was around the time that these graves in Arkansas were erected. And actually, part of the reason that they did this was to protect the graves from weather, from animals, things such as that. So you can find comb graves, hit and miss around in the southern states, but the Cumberland Plateau in Tennessee has the highest concentration of those types of graves. So that's really the closest thing I found to what we're seeing in Marshall in Canaan Cemetery. I think
was there anything in the book that alluded to any other cemeteries in the state having such situations?
Not like this. Not like this. And in fact, she does not reference Canaan directly. She just talks about different types of grave situations like tomb tables and things like that. So the structures themselves are pretty rare and pretty interesting. And I think that while there's still people out there that know the story behind these graves, Arkansas historians need to get out there and kind of, find out why. And I tried, and trust me, I almost thought about driving up to Marshall again this week, and I'm like, no, because we were about to, we had all the stuff to do with the eclipse and whatnot. But really, I think a deep dive into the Searcy County Library or Historical Society could probably pull more information about these tombs. And I keep calling them tombs because, that's what they look like to me, don't they, to you?
Oh, definitely. They definitely look like tombs.
Yeah. And they're primitive in build, and you can tell that
they're rocks.
They're rocks. Yes. Yeah. You can tell that it was sandstone that was probably pulled from, nearby. And
they're kind of like, they're just so old that, they're kind of falling. And I think, Little Bit's dad told me that he had to,
Little Bit is the star of this podcast episode.
He is. Like, he had to fix these. Like, they have kind of fallen, in the years. And so he's had to kind of fix them. So it's very interesting.
It is. And also let me point out that this is the difference between you and I when we go somewhere. You form these loving relationships with people that we just meet. Like last night at the movies, we went to see The Omen, and she just starts talking to these people across the aisle, not by us, across the aisle. And by the time we leave, they're like besties. And so this was the situation with the caretaker. Yeah. I was kind of just doing my own thing and making photos and videos and being my reclusive self. And she's over there.
And I was,
well, hi. Well, hi.
That's not how I talk. No.
But,
I do form relationships. And in my older age, I am friendly.
Well, that's crazy because, like, in my older age, I'm getting to be like, more,
reclusive.
Introverted, cranky. It's like we're going in two different directions. Yeah. He was really sweet, but it was like, I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to take some photos. So, but no, Lisa talked to him forever.
Me and him palled around for a while. I had his number. No.
You're now Little Bit's godmother.
Yes. Little Bit was cute. So.
Yeah, he was. He reminded me of the Chihuahua that my grandmother had named Sadie.
Oh, I thought you were going to say he didn't look like Scooter. Scooter was one of those little Chihuahuas that couldn't keep their tongue in their mouths. It was so hilarious. My aunt Lou has one called Georgia Grace. Georgia Grace cannot keep her tongue inside her mouth. And it's adorable.
No, Sadie was after Scooter. Yeah. Aww. Yeah. My grandmother always had a Chihuahua. Yeah. And they always had their tongue sticking out. But this one looked kind of like it was part Chihuahua, part them.
Scooter was portly as well. Sorry.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so
Okay, moving
while
forward.
Little Bit and Lisa and the caretaker were out gallivanting the cemetery, I was looking at some of these gravestones, and a lot of them are just your standard printed gravestones, but a
Mm-hmm.
lot are also several were hand carved. And when I mean hand carved, somebody buddy took a knife and did the
Mm-hmm.
carving and didn't just put the name, they put like little sayings, things like that. I mean, it was very interesting.
Yeah.
And some of them are now hard to read. If anyone out there enjoys collecting like photos of cemetery writings and doing, what is it called when you take the
Like the
crayon, the
grave rubbings,
the grave
like
rubbings?
tomb rubbings. Yes.
Yes, this place would be a dream come true. This is
Mm-hmm.
worth going up there and doing the tomb rubbings with the paper and the crayons or whatever you use.
Yes.
Chalk. I don't know what you use.
Charcoal. You would use
Charcoal, that's what it
Yeah.
is. Okay, because
Mm-hmm.
I've done
Yeah.
it before, but it's been a really
Yeah.
long time ago.
Yeah.
So after the little boy was the first grave. And of course, we don't
Mm-hmm.
have a specific date. And I did look on Ancestry and there's nothing. And
And he
they
didn't
said
have
that
a name listed
no,
either,
there
right?
was
Okay.
no name listed.
Mm-hmm.
And this, I mean, it really says on the tombstone that he passed away. It says Canaan Cemetery. First grave starting Canaan
Mm-hmm.
Cemetery. That's what it
Yes.
says. In the memory of this boy, first grave starting Canaan Cemetery between 1830s and 1850s. And
Mm-hmm.
there isn't an exact there's stories like I heard that
Mm-hmm.
the family was passing through, and maybe the caretaker's the one that said that the family was
Mm-hmm.
passing through and the baby passed away. So there's kind of like oral tradition, like who he
Mm-hmm.
was, but there's nothing that is in Ancestry that we can kind of put a birth certificate or a census or anything like that. So we don't have a specific name. Now,
Which is similar to our little unknown baby girl episode.
exactly,
Yes.
exactly. So this
Mm-hmm.
is an unknown little boy,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not even sure he was an infant, but I'm not sure exactly how old he was. So
Mm-hmm.
after that, the next grave that was put in this area was of a man named A.L. Firestone, and his headstone actually says Elder A.L. Firestone. Now, I don't know if Elder was his first name, but I don't think so. I think that was just his title. Maybe he was an elder. And then A.L. Firestone. And it only has a simple date. It looks like it was hand carved, and it says September 30th, 1857. And that is the next one after the little boy's grave. So after that, then there started to be, several more graves. Before the Civil War, there was about 9 graves in the cemetery. So it was small at that time. Very, very small. And then let's see here. I have down that there's approximately 8 graves that predate the Civil War. And of course, Civil War is 1861 to 1865. And then there were several that died during the Civil War. And there are a couple of soldiers buried in the cemetery, Civil War soldiers. One is Benjamin F. Gray, who died in 1865 at just 22 years old. And he served in Company D of the 45th Arkansas Militia, CSA, and he later served in the Company F of the 32nd Arkansas Infantry, CSA, enlisting on June 16th, 1862. Now, according to Travis Holt, who put this on the Graves website, he deserted on December 18th, 1862, and returned on March 8th, 1863. Then he was assigned to duty as first sergeant, and he was wounded slightly in the side at the Battle of Helena on July 4th, 1863. He then deserted to the enemy in 1864. So again, this is Ben Gray, very young, 22 years old. And then another soldier that is there, another Civil War soldier and I, had some trouble with some of these names because these are some hard names to say, but one of the ones that I thought were the most interesting were the ones that had a little story tacked on, and he did. And his name, let me find it. I lost it. There's so many graves. I mean, when you're digging through 1,300 graves, all right, here it is. Lemuel Holstead Jr. Now, Lemuel was a Confederate scout and was killed February 20th, 1865 by federal troops. So, Confederate scout killed by federal troops. Lemuel was a blacksmith and apparently was working in a shop around the Bear Creek area. When the federal troops showed up, he saw them coming and then took off on foot across the fields and the woods, but the troops circled around and then he was unable to escape and they killed him. Now, this is verified also by his widow, who was Miranda Jane Adams Holstead. She actually, I found a little pension military record, and he was killed. He was killed by federal troops, according to that record. But Miranda Jane was the wife of Lemuel. Miranda did not marry again after his death and continued to live out there on Bear Creek. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then she died in 1909. Yeah, very sad.
Wow. She lived quite a
long
whole
time. Yes.
Yeah, after he passed. And that's so sad that he died in the last year of the war, which was also the year that Abraham Lincoln was assassinated.
Yep,
1865.
that's true. Now, some of the big names in this graveyard are the Horton family, the Adams family, and not the different Adams family,
Not
but
that
the Horton family. Yes. There were a lot of Adams, a lot of Hortons, and like I said, there was a mass grave, and the mass grave was a little bit tricky to find anything about. According to the caretaker, the mass grave is a whole family that died from cholera. Is that correct? Is that what your boyfriend said?
I believe that's what he said. And that would have been, because I'm trying to think, that also would have been around the time frame, if I'm thinking correctly, of like the Spanish flu. And a lot of people passed of that. So that would have been in that area.
Yes. And that's probably something I should have looked up, isn't it? Yeah.
But I'll look while you keep on going.
Okay. Well,
You've got 3 minutes.
So, oh, you're so funny. All right. So Melinda Emma Iona Whitson Bailey was another really interesting one. Now, she was reportedly a Native American girl, and she was found along with her brother by a family. The family was named Whitson. They adopted the boy and the girl. So, they changed their names, but the family legend says that upon her deathbed, she did confess that when her father found her and her brother alongside the road, the children were not orphans. They had parents and a family. Now, this story has never been confirmed, but this has been a word of mouth type story all this time. And of course that's pretty interesting. That's pretty interesting. Now, another very sad story were the Tilley family. And what I found was 3 children that all died in the span of a week. And they ranged in age from, they were very, very young. It
probably would have been the cholera, because that outbreak actually was before. So probably we're looking at the flu.
Okay, so
cholera was more in the early 1800s,
so
which would have
Spanish
predated. Flu? Yes, which would have been early 1900s. So.
Okay, well, the Tilley family, and like I said, there were 3 children, and they were all they were sisters and a little brother, and they died like within a week of each other.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and the oldest one was looked like they were probably 12 or something like that. But several people died around that same time in 1884. So there must have been some kind of outbreak during that time, because what I did, I went on Find a Grave and I put the time of death and I looked to see how many people had actually died in that year. And there were some years that had more deaths than others.
And there was a huge outbreak in the 1800s of yellow fever. So it could have been yellow fever.
It could have been yellow fever too. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We are not medical experts of the historic type, but We can Google.
We can Google, yes.
We can
now,
Google.
Here, this is something else. This is another thing that makes me really sad about this is the fact that there was at least one fire, and there may have been more than one, at the Searcy County Courthouse.
Oh.
So a lot of these records are gone. They're just gone. And so what we have to go on is oral tradition and, word of mouth through the, generations. This cemetery is gorgeous and it's interesting. It has, a lot of secrets that unfortunately I was not able to uncover. I did find that most of the bigger graves were those families that I was telling you about, like the Adams. The Adams had several of those tomb-like graves. I actually think it was an Adams that you were, looking at through the little hole in the rock. I think it was an Adams. Yeah. But yeah, the photos that I put on Facebook are directly linked to the grave markers on Find a Grave, which is one of the most, one of the coolest things you can find on social media right now. You can join Find a Grave and you can be linked to all the other people that, enjoy, I don't know if enjoy cemeteries is a thing, but, but they all work together to take photos of every grave and they put them on this big, on this big site. And then, I joined so I can take photos as well. So
it is very cool. So that way, in future generations, you can find things because, like you said, a lot of documents have burned. Whenever we talked about our other, like our unknown baby girl, the census, we found out that the census records had burned in the late 1800s, so that was a problem with finding information out. So it's nice that people can go and put some information online for us.
Yeah. Well, and I will tell you that this the graves are interesting, and we see a lot of vaulted grave shafts and things like that in Arkansas. We see a lot of sitting cemetery, or like cemeteries where people can sit and whatever. There were some benches where people could sit and things like that, and I mean it was just really interesting. Now, I do want to plug one more time this Gone to the Grave, this Burial Customs of the Arkansas Ozarks, 1850 to 1950 by Abby Burnett. It is really good. It's a really good book, and I think you're borrowing it from me, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah, you're supposed to leave it.
I'm supposed to leave it here. Okay. Well, okay, so that's all I have about the cemetery. I told you it was short.
Yeah. And just a little bit business. We are going to the eclipses tomorrow. We will be doing a podcast of everything ecliptical. Anyway,
ecliptical.
There you go. And please go. We are having just an awesome time on the Facebook and Instagram. But you can find us on Facebook, Instagram. Listen everywhere. Check us out on YouTube. Email us at unexplainedarkansas@gmail.com.
Yes. And please go and look at all the photos from the Canaan Cemetery because this will make a lot more sense if you can look at the photos. And if you are a history buff, go and check it out and help us uncover some of these. Yes, report back because really I want to know more information about the people buried in Canaan Cemetery.
Yay.
Yeah, that's it. That's all we have.
So, yay.
All right. We will see you later.
Bye. Love ya.